Patients, and now we're learning more about a Richmond area chiropractor charged with 4 felony sex crimes. Thanks for joining us. I'm Candace Burns.
And I'm Cheryl Miller. New here at 6, a CBS 6 Problem Solvers investigation. Our Melissa Hippolyte explores Michael Pollock's history with the State Board of Medicine, which goes back to the early 1980s. And she asked our legal expert if past investigations and punishments could come back to haunt the accused chiropractor.
May 17, 2021, a woman walks into the Advanced Wellness Center in the Museum District to receive treatment for pain related to a car crash. The chiropractor assigned to her that day was not her regular provider, but instead Dr. Michael Pollock, a man with decades of experience and his own practice, Bon Air Chiropractic Clinic. According to a police affidavit, Dr. Pollock examined the woman head to toe and said, quote, "I really want to get in your mouth," end quote. Investigators say then he unzipped her clothing and proceeded to touch multiple parts of her body inappropriately. The affidavit states that Pollock repeatedly told the woman she was flawless and beautiful, and that later that day, Dr. Pollock assaulted one of the employees at the practice by placing his hands on her breasts after pressing on some acupuncture points. In both instances, the detective wrote what happened was not a recognized form of treatment, and the alleged victims did not consent to it. A grand jury indicted Pollock, charging him with 3 counts of aggravated sexual battery and 1 count of object sexual penetration. Here's CBS 6 legal analyst Todd Stone.
A judge or jury, whoever the fact finder is in the case, will have to make a decision about whether he stepped over that line of consent and did something illegal.
But something they most likely won't be able to consider, Pollock's lengthy history with the Board of Medicine.
The rules of evidence prohibit a prosecutor from putting in evidence of prior bad acts unless it meets a very specific criteria.
Board documents show that history began 37 years ago when the board investigated Pollock for diagnosing a woman with non-existent medical conditions in 1984. He was ordered to cease using controversial chiropractic methods. Then, in 1998, the board investigated Pollock for performing a rectal exam, which a patient thought was sexual in nature. Pollock admitted he became aroused, kissed the patient, fondled her breast, and allowed her to place her hand on his penis. But the board opted not to sanction Pollock. 5 years later, the board investigated Pollock for having a sexual relationship with a patient and making inappropriate comments to another patient. Specifically, the second patient said he had her bend forward, placed his hand on her waist, and he placed his lower body against hers from behind. The board placed his license on indefinite probation and required Pollock to have a female chaperone in the room while treating female patients. But the following year, the board investigated Pollock for directing the chaperone to falsely indicate they were present for exams. The board found Pollock's explanation for the chaperone discrepancies reasonable and fully reinstated Pollock's license. Then in 2010, the board investigated Pollock for performing breast exams on a patient for sexual gratification. The board ended up suspending his license for 12 months. However, in 2012, a psychiatrist opined to the board that Pollock was not a sexual predator and not a danger to his patients, and his license was reinstated with some conditions to include therapy and mentoring. By 2013, his license was fully reinstated.
Now, we reached out to Pollock's attorney about these allegations and the history. We are waiting to hear back. Chesterfield Police told me multiple alleged victims have come forward since Pollock was arrested. They are working with the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office to determine if they can prosecute the new cases. Now, you heard Todd Stone say in this piece that Pollock's history before the Board of Medicine most likely will not be used during the trial. But what about if Dr. Pollock is found guilty? Could it be used during sentencing? That answer tonight at 11.